Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah. There's two stags there roaring. I think there's another stag there. And there's a fourth stag roaring right there.
Shoot or pass. He looked pretty good to me when he first walked out, but after I got a better look at him, I knew right away that wasn't the stag that we'd come to Argentina to hunt. So red stags can be difficult for those of us from North America because they just tend to have so many more points than we have to deal with your average whitetail or an elk. But I found a quick way to help evaluate or break down the rack on a stag is to think of a 6x6 elk analogy. So the first thing I do is I'm going to look for a G1, a G2, and a G3 on both sides of the red stag. Once I've verified that those bottom three are present on both sides of the rack, using the elk analogy, I look for a G4. Now a G4 may or may not be present on all red stags, but if you have a G4, you tend to now be in above 300 inches because you're going to get extra points and extra length from the presence of the G4, and the G4 is often palmated at the top. Once you've taken a look at and verified that you either do or do not have a G4 present, think of the G5 and the G6 on a 6x6 elk as forming the palmated top on the red stag, and you're going to want to look for how many points are on the palmated top and how long are they. Now, if you have a free range stag that has a G4 and it's palmated and you've got good length to the palmation on the top of the rack on both sides, you're probably up into the mid 350s. Now from there, it all becomes width, mass, and tine length. So let's head over to Argentina and look at free range and high fence stags from 290 inches all the way to 600 and use that elk analogy as we walk through the different racks to help you get a better feel and put each of those racks into the size buckets that we'll discuss. This week we've been able to hunt red stag in Argentina, in the northern region of Patagonia. And when people think of red stag, I think they traditionally think of New Zealand, but Argentina has stags that are as equal to New Zealand, in my opinion. But for Americans coming to Argentina or New Zealand for the first time, the hardest thing I think for us is to be able to judge the size of stags. And for me, being from the southeastern coast of the United States, it took me a while to be able to judge elk. But elk are typically 6x6 or 7x7, and with a little bit of practice, you can get to a rough score of an elk fairly quickly. But with stags, because of the multiple points, it is just very hard for Americans to really understand or come up with a rough score, so you really have to rely on your guide. But what we wanted to do here, because at Parque Diana, it's not only incredibly well managed, but they have a broad, diverse quality of stag or size of stag. So what we have in front of us here is not only free range stags, but stags all the way from 440 inches to 600 inches. And we've lined them up to be able to give you a quick comparison of how big is 520 versus 600. So if we walk over to my far left, your right, we actually have a free range stag, and this is about 300 inches. And I hunted both managed area stags and free range stags here at Parque Diana, and the quality of the free range stags here
is far better than anything I've ever seen, and it's one of the premier sites in Argentina to hunt red stag. So this would be a very, very nice free-range stag on a well-managed property, 300, maybe up to 340, you can, in that range, are your free-range stags. Now, on your managed properties where they're intensely managed and for genetics and food, you can start getting into the much larger classes. So this class right here would be at the upper end and it'd be 440 inches. The next stag is 480 inches. And these, once you get above 480, I mean, they just become almost massive in my opinion. This is by far my favorite of all the stags that I saw here at Parque Diana, and this is 520 inches. I mean, just an incredible animal. Here we have 560 inches. And again, more points. You get about, the mass becomes very similar, but you get more points, especially up here on the palmated tops. And then on the far right, or on your left, is Muy Grande. So this is 600 inches of antler. And you can just see, if you saw this animal in the wild, how in the heck would you actually score it? So when you come to a place like Argentina or New Zealand, you'll be able to rely on your guide to give you a rough estimate of the score. You won't need to score it yourself in the field, but you should have a general idea of what size of stag would you like to hunt when you come to a ranch like Parque Diana. So here's the broad range from 300 on my left all the way up to 600, and you can see any of these would be incredible mounts in your game room. So hopefully that's helped. Stay tuned. We've hunted two incredible animals here, and we're going to make separate videos, both the managed property and free-range stag, and you've got to see the free-range stag that I take is unbelievable. Well, as we continue evaluating or trying to understand how do you estimate the size of stags, we've brought the number of antlers or racks down to 3, and we'll take a look at the differences. And the two on my left, your right, are free-range stags, and the one on my right, your left, is actually a managed area stag. And the 3 different scores that we have in front of us, this free-range stag was 290 inches. This stag is one of the stags that I took this week, and I would consider this an upper-end free-range stag on this property, and it scored 346. The last rack or set of antlers is another stag that I was able to take this week, and it actually scored 412. So you can see that the very similar between the free-range stag and the managed area stag, with the difference really being in the mass and in some of them more points. But to me, this is a classic stag shape, and I was incredibly lucky to be able to take this upper end free-range stag. And one of the points that the guides made to us yesterday when we looked at this was this stag is really on this property because of the number of hinds or female stags that are here year-round. This stag, the 290-inch stag, was taken earlier in the pre-rut, and the roar hadn't kicked in as much as it is this week, and so this stag came down to see the hinds, but then as the rut begins to really come into its own and the peak of the rut of the roar, now we see this really, really big top-end free-range stag coming down into the lower parts of the mountains in search of the hinds. Now, we did see 3 different free-range stags that were slightly larger than this, but had just recently showed up. So even though this is a managed ranch, because of all the large holes in the management fence, these deer go back and forth, and they come off the adjacent mountains to the property. So very good example of less points, less mass on free range, and then on the managed area where they've actually introduced genetics, you see just the mass, and then you tend to get on the upper end stags more points. If you choose to hunt free range, this is the kind of stag that you can take in Argentina, and I think, in my opinion, Argentina is the best place to hunt free range stag. And I'm very, very excited to be able to take this management area stag, and they'll both look great on the wall. Hopefully that helps for your next hunt when you try to decide what size of stag should you pursue and whether you should go free range or managed area stags. Great hunts, either one. You'll see in the videos that we'll post later, both of these hunts took place on the same ranch, and I couldn't tell the difference as far as the quality of the hunt in the managed area or the free range area. Both difficult stalks, difficult shots, and again, I wouldn't differentiate the quality of the experience any between the managed area and the free range area. Hope that helps. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll continue to bring videos like this to you. Until next time, good hunting.